we are talking about the future of business models and challenges. Michael Lewis, in his book, The New Thing, described business model more as an art, a piece of art. It's one of those things that you can always figure out what's a good art, but really difficult to define one. Yeah, and but at the end of it, it's in a very simple term. It's about how do you make money, and with such a lot of evolution and disruption happening across the landscape, the age-old business models, how do they evolve, survive, and actually flourish, and what are the kind of future business models that are going to shape this, is what we're going to discuss today. I think it's a broad topic, but we'll try to focus more on retail. And we have the width and the depth today to talk about this, right from geographies. I mean, Shani, you come all the way from Africa, but you have businesses in UK and Australia. Daniel, Latin America, not just South America, Mexico as well. And then, of course, from different categories, really traditional sari business to Rajiv, you being in unorganized sector of furniture and then trying to build a business there. So we have what it takes to discuss this. Maybe I'll start with Shani. You, if you could tell us a little bit about your business, and how do you actually make your business model work in those different markets? They're completely different markets, Africa and UK.
Thank you very much. That's right, Pranav. So just for introduction, I think a few years of my career was missed out on the CV that was just written. So I've been involved in running a number of the businesses for the last 10 years. So TFG, or the Foschini Group, is a large conglomerate retailer based in Cape Town. We have 4,000 stores in South Africa and Africa, in 9 countries in Africa. We also operate in 36 other countries, the UK, in the main Europe, and in Australia. And we sell ladies' fashion, men's fashion, jewelry, homeware, furniture. We also are a financial services business with value-added services. So we have our own credit book. We are lenders, and a number of other vertically integrated businesses. So we have our own factories, for example, that make some of our product. We have seen the rise of e-commerce in South Africa, as the whole world has. But at the moment in the UK, about 38% of our sales are online.
Wow.
So there you are seeing a very interesting dynamic happening with stores and people moving really into e-commerce in a far more aggressive way. In the US, it's around 22% at the moment for us. In Australia, only 1%, and in South Africa, 1%, and we believe we'll get to 10% probably in the next 5 to 6 years.
Okay.
But we believe brick and mortar will still be there.
But how do you make your business model work across these markets? I mean, is this one model which fits all, or you keep adapting and learning as you go along?
We are disrupting ourselves. That's the honest truth. We have to change our bricks model as well as how we do e-commerce all the time. At the moment, we are engaging with our landlords, because when you have that many leases to sign, you've got to think about the next 5 years. If you've got that term in your lease, do I commit to you, the landlord, for 5 years when I'm not sure if I'm going to need that location anymore? So we are continually looking at working across our silos, because we have 26 brands just in Africa. We've got to be aware of duplication, and a business model like that tends to want to duplicate itself.
Yeah.
So what we do is we try to look for ways to work in teams, to combine the back office, shared services, and reducing the duplication is what we're doing at the moment, because the key really is that we need speed to our customer. We are a very competitive market, and big corporate brick and mortar retailers are generally slow. And our challenge is that our customers want to have all the fashion immediately. You all know about fast fashion. You don't do that by being slow, by having a supply chain that's sluggish. So to be honest with you, the entire brick and mortar model, the entire value chain is being disrupted, and we are disrupting ourselves as well. And it's painful.
Okay. So Daniel, you have you represent Falabella, and it's also a conglomerate based out of Latin America. What are your learning? What are your challenges? And again, how do you make things work across the various markets you are in?
Yeah, I think this is Falabella is a 130-year-old company, so we bring a lot of legacy with us. Okay, so we started as a very traditional, tailor shop back in 1890, and now the big challenge, of course, is like anyone else in retail, and whoever has a lot of legacy is actually this transformation that's happening. So we basically handle 5 business units. We have department stores, much like if you've been to the U.S., Macy's, and then you have also home improvement, like in the U.S. again would be like Home Depot or Lowe's. We have groceries, and we also have financial services. We own a bank. We have a really important credit card, so the financial service is there, and also we have a long chain of shopping malls. So real estate is also super important for the company right now. We operate in 7 different countries across Latin America, and I would say that, and again, each one of these business units have a different brand. So this is something that is also super hard. We believe that the challenge for our business model is to actually keep up with the experience that the customer wants to have with us. And how can we do that? We really feel, the customer experience is actually shaping our business models. Now, having said that, and having so much legacy and so many years, we have to learn. Our biggest challenge is to learn how to leverage the assets we already have to do this, because you cannot just change the whole thing to the online game like right away. Like you said, what we see in Latin America is that online sales are representing right now almost 10% of the revenues of the company, and we see that in the next 5 years we can reach easily anywhere between 15 and 20% of the revenues. But that's gonna take time, and we also feel, also like you said, that the physical stores will also have to play a role. Now we have to figure that out. What is that role within the entire customer journey that the store has to play? Okay, because we tend to talk a lot about millennials, but other generations are also coming up, and not everyone behaves the same, and we're still yet to figure that out. Yeah.
You still believe 10 years from now, 20 years from now, physical retail will still exist?
Uh, I would say yes, and but it will not exist the same way in across different geographies in the world. We anyways in I would say that in Latin America we're like maybe 5 or 7 years behind industry standards in the US or Europe. So, and our learning curve is not as fast as what we saw. So it'll take time. We still see, for example, some opportunity of growth even in physical stores in some of the countries in Latin America, and I think that also will come a little bit here in India with organized retail coming up more and more. That's, at least I've been here in India for the last 2 years, and that's what I've been seeing. I can really relate to that. But also, what's really good about India and we don't have in South America is 2 things that I would say. One, that I really envy India for this, is the scale. I really believe this is the land of opportunity. If you have a good, like Vani said before, like you have identified a problem, you know how to solve it, you will have customers. But that is not true in every single market. So, and I've said this before in all the places, even if you put together all the populations of the countries of South America, they're not even half of India. So that tells you a lot of like the kind of markets we have to cater. And I think that's an advantage you guys have in India. The second one is the adoption of mobile. I think mobile adoption here in India is super powerful because of many different reasons. And for us, I think we're still stuck on the website in South America. I think India, for some reason, like skipped the laptop, the computer, and went straight to the smartphone, which is super good. We're still more on the computer side, and smartphone usage penetration is high, but we're not using it the way I see is being used in India. So I think these 2 things, we have a gap that we have to learn how to leverage in our markets.
Okay. So I've spent 15 years in Nokia and Samsung, so I'll take a little credit of that. Okay, so 20 years back, I opened a store. I joined ITC in the lifestyle retail division, and we opened a store on Warden Road, okay, uh, right next to Nalli store, right? And there was this street which had 4, 5 other brands. There was Planet Fashion, there was a watch brand, there was another ethnic wear brand. And every time I would call the store manager and say, why is the business not happening? And he would say, yo, boss, there is no footfall. And a couple of times the street, retailers in the street called me saying, what do you think we should be doing to build business on the street? And Nalli didn't have that problem, right? Bang in the middle of the stores, they were doing great business. They had the footfall, and it was quite envious. So, what's the secret sauce? How do you manage over the last 90 years to build this brand and continue to do well?
So the short answer to that and the true answer to that is we're very clear on what we don't do. So which also I think is required because there's strategy and there's market sensing and innovation and all of that. But I think also at the end of it, you need to have focus and be very clear what your particular business model is, what your particular values are, and how you choose to do business, right? Are you gunning for growth or are you gunning for profitability? And if it's somewhere in the middle, really where in the middle, right? And to think through these. So we were, to answer your question in a more tactical way, we've always been a destination store. So people, what that means is people come to us because we're in sarees. So the business is in sarees, and I think as of now it probably is the only nationwide retailer in sarees. Otherwise, you have a lot of regional players, and it's a very disorganized sector in that way. So we were very clear to say there's a reason why regional players are so strong, because this market, you can't really have a very high margin on it, which goes counterintuitive to how you think about fashion. Because consumers, most handloom sarees, almost every handloom saree is unique. The artisan and the weaver is a creative entrepreneur. He doesn't like to, there are no economies of scale for him. So he's not going to run the same line and give you 10 pieces of the exact same SKU. And also from the consumer side, women don't want to wear the exact same product as somebody else, especially if they're paying 20,000, 30,000, 40,000 rupees for that product. And so you have this SKU proliferation. It's complex. It's a disorganized market. There are regional players. Their cost structures are very, very competitive. How do you then become a national brand in that kind of a scenario? So we basically said, okay, what are we known for? What can be our strengths? What do we choose to do? What do we choose not to do? And we chose to say, okay, all the other stuff, marketing, for example, was the first thing to go out. And we said, we're going to have a very strong focus on fixed costs. So we do a cost plus model, and we negotiate as much as possible with our suppliers, and we try to get the best range at the best prices, so that we are a category killer in that market. And anything else that's going to add cost, right, which would require us to increase our margins. For example, following a high-low pricing strategy where you mark it up and then you have the discounts, we don't do. We haven't had discounts since 1940s. So that runs very counter to how the fashion industry and many other businesses in this ecosystem work. But I think this is the long answer to your question, which is we're fairly focused. Right? Product is king. Focus on cost and focus on getting the best range and the best products as quickly as possible on your shelves. Focus on inventory turns. Focus on pricing. Be competitive. And everything else for us really is window dressing. So we don't really think about that unless it really is going to add a lot of value to the consumer, which the consumer is then willing to pay for.
But over the 90 years, have you seen changes in the business model, or it's been the same? You didn't have to make any adaptations.
100%. Like we've always seen changes. I think what we're seeing now is the pace of change is really much faster. What used to take, say, 20 years in India to change now is changing every 5 years, right? And I think it'll come to a point where it's going to change every 3 years or every 2 years. So if you look at the big sort of shifts that we've had in our business in around the 40s, we decided we're not going to do haggling, we're going to have fixed price, which for that point in time was a very unheard of thing. Today it's come back in a different avatar. So the way that some of these e-commerce companies do, they look at your digital footprint and they look at it and they say, okay, this person is probably willing to pay this kind of a price, right? And so they show you personalized pricing based on what they think that you can pay. What used to happen in the 1930s and 40s? Your salesperson will look at a lady and say, okay, is she getting down from a car? Is she getting down from, from a bike? And then based on that, what am I going to sell this to her for? And we took that call at that point in time to say, no, but we don't want buyer's remorse. We don't want the consumer to come in thinking, did I get duped? Or if you look at the other side with discounts, right? Did I overpay? Should I have waited if I had waited? So we basically are like, look, everyday fair price. We work on our cost efficiencies. We work on the product and the quality, and we never go below a certain threshold. So if you're getting something somewhere else, you let us know, because I want to find out how they are able to provide that quality at that kind of a price point. But chances are there is usually some compromise in the product. And so because we've stayed very focused to those values never change. But the ecosystem, the consumer, right, what they're used to, the advent of e-commerce, right, and the convenience that's come with that. Those are shifts in the market, and we've got to adapt. Those are the places where the
So you don't play ball with Amazons and the Flipkarts. I mean, you're
we
not
don't
really
play
there.
the discount game. That we're very clear, right? But can you play the e-commerce game? Of course, because I think that is another avenue for the consumer. Once upon a time, they used to have this destination store concept, but click and collect started in the UK, and it really took off in the UK, and then it spread to the US, and now it's a very common phenomena around the world. Right? So that kind of shift has to happen, otherwise you die as an organization. But it's helps to have focus and to differentiate between what is a core value, I'm choosing not to shift that, and what is an innovation. I need to do this to be dynamic and to survive in this industry.
So Rajiv, you chose a completely unorganized industry, right? Furniture. There was no organized player, much like Sarees. I mean, why did you choose this business, and what business model you started with?
I think, I'm from Chennai, so I know the traffic that road that Nalli has. In terms of for us, I think, the funny thing is, as I hear everyone, I think everyone is saying one thing, which is you build a great product for some customer and make sure that you're listening to the customer when you're building the product and sell it to that customer, right? For a moment, if I keep aside newer business models like rental and subscription and stuff, let's just keep that aside only because I think it will become big for the millennial audience probably in the next 10, 15 years. But at the end of the day, you're still building a product for the customer. So I think for whether it's 90 years, 150 years, I think the channels have changed, the way of access has changed, consumer preferences has changed, fashion, lifestyle, all of that has changed. But at the end of the day, you're building a product which you're trying to sell profitably, and that's a very key word, to the customer because you have to sustain as a business, right? And for us, when we started, we were very clear. We picked the industry of beautifying Indian homes because there were others who were beautifying, there were others who were playing in the business of making India eat better and making India dress better, whether it was Nalli for 90 years or Myntra or Jabong. We just said, okay, roti, kapda, makan. Let's go after makan because, someone else is already doing the other two things. And you take over a space and if you go travel abroad, you realize that beautification of the Indian home beautification of the home abroad had started many decades back. Whereas I think we have great apartment complexes, which the exterior is fantastic, but the inside of the home had really not changed. And even today, I think it's, obviously still a long way to go. So that was sort of the starting genesis for us. And Ashish and me had our own personal challenges in terms of beautifying our own homes. And we had sort of, visited abroad, stayed abroad for a bit, so we knew the process there. And that was sort of the starting genesis. And I would say after that, it was building a product business. And funnily, at least age of the company, we are sort of the youngest amongst all of the companies here. So it feels good to be that. We started online. We started fully online, 100% online. And for the first 5 years of our life, we were fully online. And then we went offline. So I think that just sort of the genesis of the market, the product, the pricing, what customers demanded us from, right? So we were very, when we were small and when we were catering to the sort of the cream of the audience, just being purely online was absolutely enough. But as we expanded and as we needed to grow to a particular scale, you needed to get to a channel where the customers were there. And when we were building a brand, you also want to grow at a particular rate. And obviously, if you're just purely online, you can't grow at a particular rate, right? So a bunch of things that led us. So now we understand, what it means to sign leases and what it means to get the location right, and so many other things that we probably never had to bother earlier.
So, in terms of, there have been other players as well who have tried to organize this sector. I mean, there was Future Group, there was Lifestyle, and several years back, when I was still kind of building my career in retail, a lot of people would say, furniture business will not survive in India because customers will come with their, architect and the carpenter and borrow your concepts and just copy it. How do you see that? Have you faced those kind of challenges?
Actually, no. Like Vani said, and Vani, we were pretty lucky to have Vani on our as one of the first investor who really believed in us. So I was just listening to what she was saying. So there is a customer for everything, right? And in India, that's like he's saying, Daniel is saying, there's a customer base for everything that you will do, right? Now, how big is that customer segment? Of course, some level of some customer understanding will make it pretty aware, right? And if you really deliver a product which is a hit, the word of mouth, and beyond marketing, beyond anything else, for us, it was always about getting customer experience right. The times when we have probably not grown enough are the times when we probably let that lag, right? So we've had one of the highest net promoter scores in the world for any consumer business. It's always touched somewhere between 70 and 80. And 70 and 80 is not even some of the biggest brands in the world. So for us, whenever we got our customer experience right and our net promoter score right, we've always grown because there's always word of mouth. As long as you pick a segment, and everyone wants furniture in their homes. They're not going to lie on the floor. So, it's the simple, so the person who was doing it earlier, there were just too many hassles. The carpenter would come to your house, he would spend an entire, week doing one bed, and you had to put up with the noise. So for us, that was never competition, that was never worry. And the whole point of customization, we chose not to do customization only because we wanted a standardized product. I don't think customers wanted customization. Customers were going in for customization because they could not find something branded. So we picked a category which was not branded, which was not as organized. And I think it's actually easier to pick that kind of a category and try to organize it and build a brand in it than something which already has 10 brands. Today, if you have to launch, like Vani was saying, if you have to launch a hair oil brand, you have to fight against Parachute and its distribution. But for us, we didn't have those kind of fights. We just had to.
Till now, you were competing with the local carpenter. Now, with IKEA coming in picture, how does that change you? How do you?
Yeah, so this is
does that disruptive model?
So this is the 100th time I'm asked that question. So any panel that I go, this question will come, and I'm always prepared for it for the last 4 years. So my answer just gets better slightly. See, see, the good part is if you're building a product in any branded category. So there are two kinds of business, right? There's a marketplace business and there's a brand business. Okay. If you're building in a marketplace business, you're competing against Amazon. The Uber versus Ola, Amazon versus Flipkart. It's a winner take all, right? You're just trying to spend a lot of money, be that one winner, right? In India, maybe there are two, maybe there are three, but in the US, it's just one. So you are always just competing to be that one person. Brand businesses are not like that. Even in the US, even in Europe, IKEA has been in Europe for 45, 50 years, 60 years. They, the percentage market share there, they hold 10% and less than 10% of market share. So the beauty with any brand business is there is no one winner takes all because there are multiple customer segments, there are multiple brands that cater to different customer segments. And in the US, for example, there are at least 4 or 5 brands which are all multi-billion-dollar companies, right? And IKEA is one of them. There are 4 others. For us, when we are building a brand business, we believe in the India story. And in the next 10, 15, 20 years, there are going to be multi-such billion-dollar brands. Take apparel, for example, right? There is Zara, there is H&M, there is Uniqlo now. There's also Arvind Mills, there's also Madura Garments, there's a whole lot of brands which are anywhere from 500 to, there's Sari brands, there's, anywhere from 500 to 1,500 crores, there are at least 15 brands. Same is going to happen in the home sector also. There are probably not going to be 15, 20 brands, maybe there are 5, 6 brands because home as a category is tougher to execute compared to apparel, just one level tougher. And there's no good reason that we can't be one of those 5 brands. And that's the whole game. So just because an IKEA comes or ABC comes, that doesn't matter. There's just enough customers to buy.
That's a very good answer. Daniel, we are talking about the future of business models.
And by the way, we handle the IKEA brand for South America. So good to know that.
Yeah. So we are talking about the future of business model, but I feel that the business model of retail is currently getting disrupted. I mean, Today, if you look at online, last month I believe 50% of mobiles that got sold were online. How does the how does the local retailer survive? What does he do? I mean, is there a business model right now in retail to help them survive? Forget talking about the future.
So again, it's super hard. I don't know if I have the right answer for that, but I want to stick with something that Vani said that I think is super important. Um, Even if you have like a very traditional business model, and even if that business model is not there anymore and it's shaping, you have to make sure that whatever is that you do it well, and you'll get something out of it. I mean, I think that's what truly makes a difference. So, for example, I'll give you one example that maybe I don't know if this is super important here in India, but at least in South America, it's becoming more and more important for our customers. So whenever we sell online, okay, we are super strong in click and collect. Click and collect is super good because also drives traffic back to the store. So that's always good. But when it's not click and collect, then that's when our promise engine kicks in. And if I tell like one person sitting in Argentina, for example, in Buenos Aires, that's the capital of Argentina, and I tell them, okay, your new furniture is going to be delivered on Tuesday between 9 and 11 a.m. That experience for us is key. So what I'm trying to say is that when we think about our customer journey, everything since they browse for the stuff, then they go to the commerce site, they can actually pay easily, and then everything gets delivered on time when we promise we would do it, then that means that we are doing things right, and that is the success of our business model. So so again, and with so many things happening, like you said, like everything's changing so fast. Like whatever is a business model today is not going to be there like in the next 2 or 3 years. The ability to predict what's going to happen next is super hard. And so for us, it's also super important for executives in the company to be able to adapt and react super fast to whatever's happening out there. So I would say that the challenge in business models is actually to be that, a little bit paranoid, like it was said before, be aware of what's happening and adapt quickly. But all that only you can do if you have the fundamentals right. And the fundamentals is like anything you're doing even right now has to be, executed, the delivery, the execution has to be impeccable, has to be perfect. So that's what I would say.
Okay. So Shani, what do you say are things disrupting your business today? I mean, how do you prepare for that?
So I agree with Daniel with what he's just said. I think what we've decided to do is also to build the bridges between the customer's experience online and offline in a more sustainable way. So we have deployed a lot of technology in our stores. So we've deployed RFID into 2,000 stores already, and it's continuing to roll now, so that we have a very, very good accuracy on stock, where stock is at any point in time in the 3,000 stores that we have in South Africa. We've also deployed something called One Stock. So if a customer is shopping online and the product is out of stock, because our online at this point is a separate distribution center, it immediately starts to look for stock in any one of the stores in the closest proximity to that customer, and allows the customer then to still purchase that. The store then gets a note to say this item is being purchased by this customer, and they can then get that item ready either for click and collect or then send it to the customer. So we have created in our stores a whole new skill set. Before, a store would open and everyone get ready and wait for the customer to arrive, and now suddenly they're getting sales from online. Okay. And so they've got to figure out how to pack a parcel, how to get something ready for the courier to collect it. That's been interesting for us. That's been challenging. If we did not do that, we would have had a challenge, because stores will not sell what does not show up in their revenue line. So we had to find a way to get our stores to integrate with what the customer wants, and that is frictionless retail, right? Is doing things right and doing things easily for the customer. So we have had to find a way to get our stores and our online business, and I know it sounds strange that it's not one, we're not saying it's yet one, we are getting there, to create this bridge, as I say. In addition, we've also had to improve the quality of service in our stores, because customers are coming and looking for information. We sell a lot of furniture, we sell a lot of appliances, we sell a lot of branded goods, and we've had to make sure that our staff is as knowledgeable as our customer. Now that's a big challenge, and we've had to deploy technology for staff to be able to learn on the spot, even to the point where we have deployed technology that they can learn on their way to and from work without having to consume data. So we have a bill back process now where we pay for the data consumption. This is all to improve the transformation of the business.
So Lavanya, coming back to you, you made a point earlier that do you think the age of one business model surviving decades is over? You're going to have to evolve every 3-5 years, and what makes you lose sleep today? What keeps you awake? What's going to happen in your business?
So I think business models do have to evolve. That's the short answer. For businesses to survive, you do have to constantly adapt to your environment, and the environment today, or if I look at what's shifted the most in the recent past, I think there's two opportunities that have cropped up, right? One is digital as a channel, which didn't exist before. The second thing is just the advent of technology, not just from a consumer standpoint, but how it can help you as an organization to scale. Now, both of those are opportunities, and if we don't seize it, that's fine, but our competitors are, right? And they're embracing it. So then what ends up happening for an incumbent is that you die a slow death, because you're hemmed in by the sterility of your success. We've always done it this way, and so we'll continue to do it this way. And then meanwhile, everybody else is scaling because they've moved from an apprenticeship-based training model to something which is sort of tech-enabled, right? And so they're able to scale faster. They're able to codify their things and push it out to their frontline faster. Or they've opened up digital as a channel, and initially they might have been pretty bad at it. But this is what happens when you've got strong leadership and you have focus, right? Eventually you get it right. And by the time you wake up and realize someone else has cracked this model, it's already too late, because they've kind of gone through that journey. And so from that standpoint, I think you will always, as any business, you'll at any stage in your growth, you will always have to adapt to the changes in the market. The only thing you can't do is you can't say that I will stay, we've always done it this way. I think that is death for any organization.
Coming back to your category, I mean, saris, if I look at my family, my mom and my mom-in-law would always wear sari, but at my generation, it's only during festival period that people are buying saris. So do you think maybe in a few years, it could happen that ethnic wear people are just renting out during festivals and seasons and not actually ending up buying on a regular basis?
You asked a really controversial question. So I'm not as concerned about rent, because just from what I see with our consumers, because we still get a lot. We've tested this, right? We've asked, we've gone to where our stores are the strongest, and we've got, the brand equity is the strongest. And consumers almost have a visceral reaction to it, and they say, I can't imagine wearing a sari which someone else has worn. But the shift of sari being something that was a regular purchase and something that contributed X% of your wardrobe to it becoming now more and more an occasional purchase and having a far lower share of wardrobe is true. Right? Having said that, if you actually look at the industry and say, okay, but then where is this growth coming from? There's headwinds and tailwinds. Right? Some of the tailwinds are India as an economy is growing. We get more and more people, and to Daniel's point about scale. There's scale, there's the demographics that we have in our favor, there's how many more people, how our population is expanding, and how many more people are just moving into the middle class, and how many more people are spending on things for themselves. Previously, they would spend it on very prudent, they would spend their money in very prudent expenditures, and the rest of it would go into savings. Now people are spending on themselves. They're spending on apparel. They're spending on eating outside. They're spending on vacations, on experiences. So those are the tailwinds, right? The consumer mindset, just the number of people who are moving into the addressable market, and therefore the size of the addressable market itself. The other trends which has to do with revival and more sensitivity towards Indian heritage and our culture and products like that. And then there are the headwinds, which really is things like shifting away from a regular purchase to an occasion-led purchase. I look at it and I think, look, net, it's okay. It is what it is, right? When we've got to adapt. What does Nalli have? We're more than just a sari brand, we're a brand. People think of Nalli and they say, I trust them. I trust them. They've been in the business for 90 years. They stand for quality, right? If you look at what Tata stands for, you're not going to say, oh, Tata is TCS or Tata is Tanishq, or Tata is, Tata's Tata. They have a certain core value. And I think the same thing is how we look at it, to say, look, Nalli is Nalli and we do business a certain way. And we've got to be very clear and focused on what we do business and what is non-negotiable, what are our core values, and where we need to really be market sensing and dynamic and adapt.
So, I mean, our finance minister also said that, the reason why the automobile industry is not doing well is because millennials are buying less cars, they are renting it out. Rajiv, coming back to you, you did mention rentals. You expect rental as a business model to kind of also come up in future?
Yeah, I think it will, but in the next 10, 15 years, I don't think it's immediate. There are companies that are going to become big in that model. But see, at the end of the day, again, it's very difficult to predict beyond. I don't think 5 years back, all of us predicted that, booking a cab on mobile is going to be this big, right? So I would be fooling myself if I think that I know what's going to happen 10 years out. I wouldn't know 2 years out, right? But at the end of the day, I think from a business model perspective, if you are a company which is trying to get into the space, see, you can be either a big company, which is, an older company, or a bigger company which has been in that space, which could be online first or offline first. And for that, I think the whole integration business, which is you already have a huge set of customers, what can you sell outside of just the core retail to them? Can you sell payments? Can you sell, financial services? Maybe get into real estate. The whole integration of that is probably the angle to take. Maybe there are mid businesses, which are businesses like us, which are 7, 10 years old. And for us, I think to make sure that we use the best of what technology offers, because it becomes very difficult for brands to go build all the technology themselves. Thankfully, there's a huge number of technology players out there too. So, maybe if rental becomes such, so big, we'll have to figure out what the supply chain gearing for that needs to be, right? Or we say, no, we stick to who we are. I think the point that she made, which is, you need to know what you're good at and stick to a few things, because if you try and do too many things, I think that's going to become too difficult to really digest. And the last piece is someone who's really small. For example, today, I don't think you could have imagined the number of cloud kitchens, because earlier, if you had to really go do a food business, you probably had to set up a physical restaurant and you had to pay probably 50 lakhs to 60 lakhs. Today, with probably an investment of less than 10 lakhs, the number of companies that have come up. So there's a humongous opportunity that has also been created for small players. And if someone is selling, to your original question, someone is selling mobile phones, maybe that's not the business to be in today, because it's just, very low margins. There's an Amazon and Flipkart which is probably going to pay a lot of money to be in that business. So maybe you just have to completely innovate and change categories, right? As an entrepreneur, that's at the end of the day, because plagiarism, like Vani said, is going to be there, right? Some of our best designs get copied like in 3 months. Are we going to come crib that's happening, or are we going to out-innovate and get the next best design? We have to do the latter. We can't do the former, right? So I think that's just reality, because technology allows you to plagiarize easy also. So you just have to out-innovate the market.
So we kind of run out of time, but one last question, given the fact that the theme is 10x growth, what are the kind of business models you see which will help 10x growth? I mean, everybody talks about freemium and, are those the models that are going to help us?
I don't think there is one straight answer to this. I think I go back to the primary answer. There is enough and more customers in every segment. India's income is only growing, the number of people who are spending. So whether you pick the luxury segment, whether you pick the premium segment, whether you pick the core segment, whether you pick a value segment, as long as you build a product which the customer, and you can test at very low cost today, which was not possible 10 years back, right? There are people so any of these businesses, I don't believe the macro environment's pluses and minuses will happen, but that's not going to fundamentally make you not want to do something. So there is enough and more, whether you're a tech business, whether you're a product business, there's enough and more to be done. So it's tough to answer that question, honestly.
Okay. So do we have time for questions? No? Okay. Yeah, I think thanks everyone for very engaging sessions, and hopefully it's been fruitful for all.